My name is Cassandra Reynolds, and I'm 35 years old. For as long as I could remember, I'd been desperately trying to be the good daughter. I spent 35 years chasing my mother's love and approval. That belief shattered into a million pieces at my mother Evelyn's 65th birthday party. I had reserved a private dining room at Boston's most prestigious steakhouse, Fleming's. I decorated it with her favorite white roses and hydrangeas. I invited her closest friends and hired a professional photographer. I even spent months working with a jeweler to restore my grandmother's sapphire bracelet. It was a family heirloom that she'd always coveted. I poured my heart, soul, and savings into that night. I believed that finally, my mother would see me. She would appreciate me. She would thank me. When Mom stood up with her crystal wine glass to make a toast, my heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. She was going to say it. "Thank you, Cassandra." I watched her face, waiting for those words. But then, Mom's eyes found mine. "You know, as I've gotten older, I've realized something important," she said, raising her glass high. "What I really want is for certain people to disappear from my life completely. I'm tired of fake relationships. I want freedom from connections that should never have existed in the first place. These burdens that masquerade as family obligations." Dead silence. You could hear a pin drop. Not even the sound of silverware against plates. It was like time had frozen in this suffocating quiet. Her friends awkwardly looked away. The photographer I'd hired sensed the tension and quietly packed up his equipment, slipping out of the room. There was no doubt who those words were meant for. What my mother didn't know was that I was about to grant her wish. Perfectly. Beyond her wildest imagination. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, planning what would change both our lives forever. By 6 a.m., my decision was crystal clear. I would give Mom exactly what she wanted. First, I called my office. "I need to take 2 weeks of emergency personal leave." Next, I called James Wilson, my real estate agent. "I need to sell my condo immediately." Quietly. No public listing. You might wonder how I could make such a drastic decision so quickly. It goes back to when I was 12 years old, the day my father died of a sudden heart attack. The first words my mother said to me at the hospital still echo in my ears today. "Why weren't you watching him more carefully? You knew his heart was weak." Those words planted themselves deep in my soul. In my mother's carefully crafted narrative, Dad's death became my fault. It was the beginning of a lifetime of conditional love. Love I could never quite earn. Through high school, I maintained a 4.0 GPA. I was captain of the debate team and editor of the school newspaper. But Mom's response to every achievement was consistent. Jennifer's daughter got into Harvard. Lisa's daughter had much better stage presence at her recital, even in college. Even when I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and economics, Mom found reasons to criticize. She didn't even come to my graduation, claiming she had a migraine. Her interference extended to my relationships too. At 22, I was dating Michael, a kind medical student. The night I brought him home for dinner, Mom systematically tore me down. "Cassandra has always been so awkward around boys. I'm surprised someone like you even noticed her." Then she called him privately. She told him about my emotional issues and suggested I needed more therapy before I'd be ready for a serious relationship. He broke up with me shortly after. This pattern repeated with Ryan at 25, with James at 28. Mom always found a way to destroy any happiness I found. "I'm just worried about you," she'd say. "You have such terrible judgment with men." Despite everything, I built a successful career. By 35, I was managing portfolios for wealthy clients. I'd been promoted to senior advisor at my firm. I owned a beautiful condo in Boston's Back Bay and had created a stable life for myself. And still, I continued supporting my mother. After Dad died, she'd never worked. When his life insurance and pension started running low, I stepped in to supplement her income. I paid her property taxes, covered her utilities, funded her luxury lifestyle. Every Sunday, I'd drive to her house in Brooklyn. I'd listen to her complaints about neighbors, friends, and most frequently about me. That night at the restaurant, after the main course but before dessert, I stood up to present my gift. The small blue velvet box felt heavy in my hands. Mom, I wanted to give you something special for your 65th birthday. The table went quiet as I handed her the box. She opened it and stared at the sapphires catching the light against their white gold setting. It was truly beautiful. I'd spent thousands having Boston's finest jeweler professionally restore it. Mom stared at the bracelet for a long, then she snapped the box shut. The sharp click cut through the silence. Grandmother should have left this to me in the first place, she said, her voice ice cold. She always favored you inappropriately. The table fell into uncomfortable silence. My cheeks burned with humiliation. The cake arrived with its candles blazing. We sang happy birthday. Mom smiled for the photographer, then stood for her toast. Thank you all for coming tonight. Her voice carried across the silent room. It's wonderful to be surrounded by true friends on my birthday. She didn't look at me. Then came those cruel words that would haunt me forever. The drive home was silent. When we reached her house, she gathered her things, including the bracelet box she never reopened. Dinner was adequate, she said, opening the car door. Next time, choose a better restaurant. Fleming's is going downhill. I couldn't stop myself. Did you mean what you said? About wanting me out of your life? She sighed heavily. If you're going to take everything personally, that's your problem. But yes, our relationship has always been a burden. I fulfilled my obligation to raise you. I don't have to pretend there's some special bond now. She slammed the car door and walked to her house without looking back. I sat in that driveway for nearly 20 minutes, crying until I was calm enough to drive home. Lying in bed that night, I realized a fundamental truth. No achievement, no gift, no sacrifice would ever be enough to make my mother love me. The next morning, I made an appointment with my financial advisor, Gregory Peters. I arrived at his office with detailed lists of all my accounts and assets. I want to completely separate my mother's finances from mine today, I explained. Every account, every automatic payment, every financial connection. Gregory looked over my paperwork. He frowned. This is quite extensive. Property taxes, utilities, credit cards, insurance, medical copays. You're essentially supporting your mother's entire lifestyle. And I want to stop all of it immediately. We spent 3 hours restructuring my financial life. I froze the joint checking account where I'd been depositing money for her expenses. I canceled automatic payments from my accounts to her creditors. I removed myself as an authorized user on her credit cards. I removed her as a beneficiary from my life insurance and retirement accounts. What about her house mortgage? You've been making those payments for 5 years. Stop that too. The house is in her name. The responsibility is hers. Next, I went to the post office. I arranged for all my mail to be forwarded to a new P.O. box. I called every service provider we shared, from home security to lawn care, and removed my name and payment information. Using my knowledge as a financial advisor, I was meticulous. I left no loose ends, no forgotten automatic payments, no financial connections that could pull me back into her orbit. Back at my condo, I packed only what I truly needed: clothes, important documents, irreplaceable photos of Dad, a few sentimental items. Everything else would be sold with the condo or donated. That night, I wrote my final letter to my mother. After 7 drafts, I had something that expressed my feelings without anger or blame. Mom, you said the best gift would be for me to disappear from your life. Consider it given. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. All the financial support I've provided over the years has ended. The house bills and all expenses are now completely your responsibility. This isn't coming from anger. It's coming from acceptance. You were right when you said our relationship was based on obligation, not love. I'm freeing us both from that obligation. Don't try to find me. I don't want to be found. Cassandra. I sealed the letter in an envelope and drove to her house at midnight. I slipped it under her door and walked away without ever looking back. That night, I checked into a hotel under a different name, paying cash. Sitting on that generic hotel bed, I felt a surreal mix of emotions. From intense grief to profound relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for my mother's happiness, comfort, or financial security. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was immense. I took a deep breath in that empty room. Over the next week, my plan unfolded with mechanical precision. James, my realtor, found a cash buyer for my condo. I accepted a price 15% below market value for the quick, private sale. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution and transferred my assets. I deactivated my social media accounts and got a new phone number. With only what fit in my car, I drove west with no specific destination. With every mile, I put physical distance between my old life and whatever was coming next. A week after I disappeared, my mother started trying to reach me. At first, her messages to my old email and disconnected phone number showed more irritation than worry. Cassandra, the lawn service says they canceled the contract. Call me immediately. The electric company claims the auto pay stopped. Fix this today. She never mentioned my letter. In her mind, regardless of what had happened or what I'd clearly communicated, I was still responsible for her life. 10 days after I left, my former assistant Megan emailed me at the new address I'd only given to my therapist. Your mother came to the office today. She was very upset, demanding to know where you were. Security had to escort her out when she started yelling. Are you okay? Within 2 weeks, my mother discovered that her mortgage payments were overdue. According to Eleanor, my mother's elderly neighbor, this discovery sent Mom into a complete panic. She hadn't made a mortgage payment in 5 years and had completely forgotten the process. Mom's next battlefield was social media. I deactivated my accounts, but friends forwarded me screenshots of her increasingly dramatic posts. My daughter has abandoned me without warning. After everything I sacrificed for her, she's left her elderly mother without support or care. Please help me find her. 3 weeks after I disappeared, my mother discovered that our joint account had been frozen. According to Eleanor's updates, this was the moment reality really started to sink in. She went to the bank and made a scene. They suggested she open a new account with her own funds since the joint account was frozen. She said she didn't have funds, that Cassandra had been handling everything. My mother had neglected to understand her own financial situation, despite having a modest pension from Dad's work plus Social Security income. She'd always relied on my supplemental support to maintain her lifestyle. Without it, she faced harsh reality. A month into my absence, my mother received overdue notices on her credit card payments. All 6 of her cards were maxed out, and she'd only been making minimum payments using my money. Now she faced over $40,000 in credit card debt with no way to pay. 5 weeks after I left, my mother missed her second mortgage payment and received the bank's first formal warning. This, combined with her mounting credit card debt, triggered her first health crisis. Eleanor found her collapsed in her kitchen, hyperventilating from an anxiety attack. At the hospital, her blood pressure was dangerously high. Doctors prescribed medication for anxiety and hypertension. She kept asking about you, Eleanor told my therapist. It was the first time I'd seen her worried about you. Just you, purely. Not what you could do for her. 6 weeks later, my mother left her first voicemail that wasn't a demand or accusation. Her voice sounded smaller, older. Cassandra, I don't understand why you did this. I want you to come home. I miss you. The last part sounded forced, unpracticed, like expressing affection was a foreign language to her. 2 months after I left Boston, my mother received a foreclosure warning. Her house in Brooklyn's expensive market was worth nearly $1 million. There was substantial equity there, but she didn't know how to access it or manage a sale. Even 80-year-old Eleanor helped my mother meet with a financial advisor who explained her situation in harsh terms. Sell the house, pay off the debts, and find more affordable living, or face bankruptcy and foreclosure. Then, 3 months in, unexpected news arrived. Did you know your mother kept all your childhood artwork? Eleanor's voice trembled over the phone. Boxes and boxes of it in the attic. And this morning, I found her crying while looking through it. My mother had kept my artwork, the same mother who used to throw my creations in the trash. Your mother finally broke down. She admitted she drove you away. She showed me the letter you left. I've known her for 40 years, and it's the first time I've ever seen her take responsibility for anything. 3 months after my disappearance, my mother wrote me a letter. Eleanor forwarded it through my therapist, asking if I wanted to read it. I hesitated but eventually agreed. The letter was unlike anything I'd ever received from my mother. Her usually perfect handwriting was shaky, and the paper looked like it had been crumpled and smoothed flat. Cassandra, for months, I was angry that you abandoned me. Yesterday, I found photo albums in the attic, pictures of you growing up that I'd forgotten about. Looking at your face in those photos, I saw something I'd never allowed myself to see before. How much you were hurting, even as a child, because of me. I wasn't a good mother to you. I was jealous of your relationship with your father. After he died, it was too painful to blame myself, so I blamed you. I resented you for being young, for having opportunities I never had. None of this is an excuse. I'm not asking for money or help. The house is being sold next month. I'm moving to a senior apartment that I can afford on my pension and Social Security. I understand why you left. I would have left too. I'm sorry. Mom, the letter contained no demands, no guilt trips, no manipulation. For the first time in my life, my mother was seeing me as a separate person with valid emotions. A week later, Eleanor sent another update. My mother had joined a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. She was seeing a therapist once a week. She was learning to do things for herself that she'd always relied on others to handle. While my mother was facing her new reality, I was building mine. After 2 weeks of driving, I settled in Seattle. The first few months, the constant rain and gray skies matched my mood. But gradually, the stunning beauty of the Pacific Northwest began healing something inside me. I found a modest apartment in Queen Anne with a view of Puget Sound. Unlike my Boston condo, I furnished this place entirely to my own taste. No guest rooms to impress anyone, no formal dining room, just a space that felt like home to me. Using my experience and credentials, I found a position with a boutique financial firm specializing in ethical investments. We value advisors who care about clients as people, not just portfolios. The managing partner said during my interview. That simple statement about human dignity almost brought me to tears. Finding a therapist was my next priority. Dr. Matthews specialized in childhood trauma and toxic family dynamics. Estrangement is sometimes the healthiest choice, she told me in our first session. Not all relationships can or should be salvaged. Those words gave me permission to stop feeling guilty about my choice, to stop second-guessing the decision that had allowed me to breathe freely for the first time in decades. I met Daniel at my friend Stephanie's small New Year's gathering. He was a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a quiet sense of humor. Meeting his family was an education in what healthy family dynamics looked like. His parents disagreed without contempt. They expressed affection without conditions. They showed interest in his life without trying to control it. Your family is so normal, I told Daniel afterward. It's kind of wonderful. 6 months later, I had my first major breakthrough in therapy. Dr. Matthews asked me to write a letter to my younger self. Dear little Cassandra, it wasn't your job to make Mom happy. Her unhappiness lived inside her long before you were born. You didn't cause it, and you could never have fixed it. You were a good daughter. You deserved love exactly as you were. Reading those words aloud in Dr. Matthews' office, I cried until my throat hurt. For the first time, I truly believed them. As the 1-year mark of leaving Boston approached, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I was going back, not to stay, not to rescue, but to see with my own eyes who my mother had become in my absence. On the second day, I visited Eleanor. At 81, she remained sharp and insightful. Your mother has changed, she said over tea in her Beacon Hill apartment. Not completely, but there's a humility there now that I never thought I'd see. I hadn't planned to see my mother that day, but leaving Eleanor's building, I found myself automatically driving toward Brooklyn. I arrived at a modest senior apartment complex. completely different from the stately colonial she'd lived in for decades. I parked across the street, planning just to look at the building and leave, but sitting in my car, I saw her walking toward the entrance with a small bag of groceries. She moved more slowly than I remembered. Her posture wasn't as rigid. Without making a conscious decision, I got out of my car. At the coffee shop next to her apartment building, we nearly collided. I decided to get coffee to calm my nerves before leaving. She was in line ahead of me. She didn't recognize me at first. My hair was shorter, my style more casual, my expression more relaxed. Only when the barista called Cassandra for my order did she turn around, eyes wide with shock. Cassandra. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Mom." We sat awkwardly, two strangers who had once been mother and daughter. "I didn't know you were in Boston," she finally said. "I didn't tell anyone except Eleanor. You look good. Different, but good." "So do you," I replied, and I meant it. There was a softness to her that hadn't existed before. The harsh lines of perpetual disapproval had somewhat faded. After a few minutes of tense small talk about weather and the coffee shop, I suggested we walk in the park across the street. Public space, neutral ground, but more private than the busy cafe. We sat on a bench, carefully spaced apart. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then my mother did something I'd never seen her do. She cried quiet, dignified tears and tried to wipe them away discreetly. "I'm sorry," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the tears. "I thought I'd never see you again. I wasn't planning to come back," I admitted. She nodded. "I understand why. I've had a lot of time to think about everything. Eleanor said you joined a support group." "Yes, it's called PAC, Parents of Estranged Adult Children." She gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "At first, I went to learn how to get you back, but instead, I learned why you left. The other parents there all had stories about ungrateful children who abandoned them for no good reason. But as they talked, I started seeing patterns. Control, criticism, emotional manipulation. I recognized myself in their stories, and it was uncomfortable. I could hardly believe what I was hearing and stayed silent. My therapist, Dr. Collins, helped me understand something I never wanted to face. She took a deep breath. "I treated you the way my mother treated me." This was new information. My grandmother, who died when I was 10, had always been portrayed as a saint in family stories. You never talked about grandmother. I never talked about her to anyone. I was ashamed, like somehow her treatment was my fault. When you were born, I swore I'd be different, but I didn't know how. I had no model for good mothering. Only perfect images from magazines and TV that I could never live up to. "That explains some things," I said carefully, "but it doesn't excuse them." "No," she agreed immediately. "It doesn't, especially not how I treated you after your father died. I was jealous of your relationship with him. He knew how to love you in a way I never knew how to love anyone." This frank admission surprised me. My mother had never acknowledged Dad's superior parenting, much less admitted to jealousy of our bond. "After he died, I blamed you because I couldn't bear to blame myself for not being there. And then, over the years, it became a habit to make you responsible for my happiness, my comfort, everything. It was wrong, Cassandra. All of it was wrong." We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of decades of pain between us. "I brought something for you," she finally said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a worn leather journal and offered it to me. "I've been writing in this since you left. My therapist suggested it might help me understand my actions and their impact on you. You don't have to read it, but if you ever want to understand, it's all there. My childhood, my marriage to your father, my failures as a mother, and my efforts to become a different person." I took the journal, feeling its weight in my hands. "Thank you," I said, not sure if I'd read it. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I'm not asking to be part of your life again. I just wanted you to know. I understand now why you had to leave, and I'm truly sorry you needed to." When we parted that day, there was no tearful reconciliation, no promises of restored relationships. Instead, there was something more valuable. Truth. For the first time, we'd spoken honestly about our shared past and the damage that had been done. I live in Seattle now, I said as she stood to leave. I have a good life there. She smiled, a genuine smile without bitterness. I'm glad. That's what I should have wanted for you all along. I can't promise anything, I said carefully. But if you'd like, we could exchange emails. Just for 3 months. See how it goes. No phone calls. No visits. Just written words that can be carefully considered before sending or reading. I would like that very much, she replied, her voice steady, but her eyes bright with tears. 2 years have passed since then. In that time, I've built something I never thought possible. A life defined by peace rather than anxiety, by genuine connection rather than obligation, by self-worth rather than desperate approval seeking. My career in Seattle has flourished. I made partner last year, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence after divorce or bereavement. The work feels meaningful in a way my Boston position never did. Perhaps because I directly understand the power of financial security in creating freedom. Daniel proposed 6 months ago on a hiking trail overlooking the Olympic Mountains. Unlike my previous relationships, our connection had grown slowly and steadily, based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than desperation or convenience. When I said yes, it was with complete confidence, not the agonizing doubts that had accompanied major decisions in my past life. My relationship with my mother has evolved into something I never could have imagined. Our email correspondence gradually expanded to occasional phone calls. Last Christmas, I invited her to Seattle, and to my surprise, she came. Watching her interact with Daniel and his family was revelatory. She was quieter than before, more observant, less quick to judge or criticize. When Daniel's niece showed her a drawing, my mother praised it genuinely without pointing out flaws or making comparisons. Your mother isn't what I expected from your stories, Daniel said after she returned to Boston. She's not the same person, I replied, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. Neither am I. We're planning a small wedding next spring. When I hesitantly asked if she'd like to attend, my mother's response surprised me. I'd be honored, she wrote, but I'll understand if you change your mind. This day should be perfect for you, and you shouldn't feel stressed because of my presence. This consideration for my feelings, this willingness to step back if needed, was evidence of how far she'd grown. My mother continues therapy and her support group. She volunteers at a community garden and teaches art classes at her senior living facility. We'll never have the close mother-daughter bond that some of my friends enjoy with their mothers. Too much damage was done too early. Some wounds, even when they heal, leave permanent scars. But we have something different, something hard-won through separation, self-reflection, and intentional change. An honest relationship between two adults who see each other clearly, with all our flaws and strengths. Looking back on my decision to disappear from my mother's life, I can see now that it was necessary not just for my healing, but for hers. As long as I remained there absorbing her criticism and fulfilling her needs, neither of us could change. Only in my absence was she forced to confront her actions and their consequences. At her recent birthday dinner, a quiet affair at a restaurant near her apartment, she raised her glass for a toast very different from the one that changed our lives 2 years ago. To second chances, she said simply, and to a daughter who had the courage to leave so we could both find better versions of ourselves. Not everyone who reads this story will understand my choice. Some will think it cruel to leave an elderly parent without support. Others will wonder why I allow contact to resume. But I've learned that healing rarely follows a straight, simple path. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is to disappear until your true worth can be seen. Sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply can change, given enough time and motivation. And sometimes the family we choose can teach us how to heal the wounds given by the family we were born into. Daniel and I are building a life based on mutual respect, open communication, and genuine love. His family has welcomed me with a warmth I didn't know was possible. My circle of friends continues to grow, each relationship teaching me something new about what healthy connections look like. As for my mother and me, we proceed carefully. Each interaction is a small test of our new boundaries and understanding. There are still difficult moments when old patterns try to reassert themselves. But now we have tools to recognize and redirect these tendencies before they cause new damage. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself and others is the courage to disappear. Stay away until they can see your true worth. Have you ever needed to step away from loved ones to heal? If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, it's never too late to create boundaries that protect your peace.